Behold how good it is, and how pleasant when brethren dwell in unity.
This week's Torah portion covers Deuteronomy 11:26 to 16:17. Deuteronomy opened with a historical recap of the Exodus and Sinai. But in chapter 12, the author stops reminiscing and starts reiterating the Torah's law code. For 14 chapters, Deuteronomy lays out the statutes that are to govern the 12 tribes once they settle in the land. Most of the decrees cover the everyday life of Israelites and are familiar from previous Torah portions: eating kosher, protecting the poor, tithing, and keeping the feast. The Deuteronomists insist on the importance of following all of the divine commandments. The people are not to add to the law or take away from it. But it is Deuteronomy 12 that introduces a new reform in the sacrificial law of all Israelites. Moses says, "You are to seek the place the Lord your God will choose from among all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling. To that place you must go. There bring your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts." Deuteronomy 12 looks to a future day when the tabernacle no longer needs to be portable. Until now, God has moved his cloud of presence from camp to camp, following the Israelites in their 40-year journey. God portends that they are entering into a place of rest from their wanderings and from their neighboring enemies. When they are living in relative safety, God desires his presence to also have a place of rest. The location of God's sanctuary is not named outright, but the principle of centralization restricting sacrificial worship to one place is asserted 6 times in the same chapter. Many Bible scholars feel this command is the most important legislation to come out of all of Deuteronomy. From Joshua's death to the time of the prophet Samuel, the tabernacle stayed in the town of Shiloh, Israel's first capital. King David later transported the tabernacle to the newly occupied city of the king, Jerusalem. And it was David's son Solomon who constructed the first temple in Jerusalem and transported the ritual vessels to the temple's inner sanctums. The process took 450 years, but Jerusalem finally became the dwelling place for God to set his name. Though Deuteronomy is absolute on the point of centralization, the Israelite tribes still sprinkled their open-air shrines all over Israel from at least the 9th to the 6th centuries. Archaeologists in Israel have found ancient altars on hilltops, at city gates, along ridges, and in wooded clearings. These high places were often former Canaanite places of worship, the same places God had commanded them to utterly demolish. Instead, they gave in to the temptation and made sacrifices and burned incense to the false gods of their neighbors. In the book of Kings, Israel's royal leaders are judged righteous or evil by how they dealt with the diffusion of shrines. According to the narrator of Kings, the kings who destroyed the alternative shrines were good and the ones who left them multiply were evil. The biblical prophets also condemned the high places. Hosea referred to the high places of wickedness as the sin of Israel and likened the practice to adultery. They had left the one true God to lust after other gods. In the days of Jeremiah, the altars were blatantly contaminated with idol worship. It wasn't until reforms of King Josiah that the high places were finally abolished. Under Josiah, Jerusalem became the single place of sacrificial worship and devotion. And what was the inspiration for Josiah's revolution? The high priest Hilkiah found a scroll while the temple was being renovated. It was a book of laws which contained blessings and curses. According to most Bible scholars' best guess, that book of the covenant was what we today know as Deuteronomy. Shabbat Shalom.
Behold how good it is, and how pleasant when brethren dwell